I always joke with my mother that I suffer from black privilege out here.
Being in Singapore, you forget the idea of like racism. You forget about those things that you experience, those microaggressions that you experience in the States. So for better or for worse, you start to forget those things, which can be a good thing in the moment. It can be a relief from being in the States. So one thing about Singapore is that it's the first time I've ever felt American.
Oh, wow. Wow, I've heard this like twice today.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, because in America, you can't be, I've never heard of anyone calling me American. I've never heard that term. If you're only American if you're white. The media in America seeks to divide, seeks actively to divide.
Wow.
I had never realized that until I came out here.
Singapore is very unique in that sense to where I would say the racial label isn't as on the forefront. So moving here, I think people can see that and feel that really quickly. It's not the cliche of, oh, I don't see race. No, race is seen, but it's not a part of the conversation of what you do. I'm a man first here, which is great, and then that's actually very valuable to just be a man. I just also happen to be a black man. But being a man first is something that Singapore really embraces, which I really appreciate. I mean, so Singapore, I would say as a black person, I mean, it's very mentally healing here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very peaceful.
Wow.
There wasn't a civil rights movement for black people here. There wasn't a need for it. It didn't happen here, right? So what might be like, commenting on someone's tone or, complexion, that's a delicate and very, you have to be kind of a professional linguist to have a complexion conversation in America. So that comes from the historical context where like in Asia or in China, they'll just say it like, oh, you're really dark. And you're kind of like, well, it takes you back from it like, okay, that's not a problem. I like being dark, but the way you said that was so direct that you're like, whoa. But then you realize, oh, you're just telling the truth. And that's not, you're just, there's no issue there. There's no underlying point there.
In the media, in Western media, the singularity of our treatment tends to be on the negative side, right?
So who is responsible for that?
So the mediation is clearly the responsibility of the media, right? As in like the putting out of that message, right? But in terms of who's responsible for rectifying that, it really and truly is up to us. And when you have shame or anxiety even in who you are and what you look like, that anxiety brings that very thing. Anxiety about what you look like is almost a premonition of what you are going to receive from other people.
I see.
It is a premonition, really and truly, right? So if you are completely at ease with yourself, so will other people. If we live in a world of mirrors, then really what we're getting from the world
is what we
coming from us.
To be true.
The lack of respect that we get from other races, is that not evident, is that not insanely proliferated in our community? A lack of respect for each other, right? The lack of economic opportunities, right? Is that not reflected in our lack of support of black-owned businesses?
But I don't think I've experienced racism here in the same way I would have experienced racism in the UK. I think Singapore in general is a very safe place, and I think a lot of the racism or prejudice or biases, I would say, are more ignorance. Ignorance to people not engaging with a black person before, not really knowing how to engage. And I kind of encourage a lot of the Singaporean friends that I have to ask me questions. To the same way I'm in their country and learning about Singaporean culture, it's nice for them to give them the opportunity to learn about black culture.
It's much more relaxed here. I can't say there's much there's tiny amount of racism here, but it's so small, it's ridiculous, but I would say there's none, to be honest with you.
And so you have all these different races and all these different religions living harmoniously with one another, no biases, there's no, like American Canada can take some lessons from Singapore. Like this is how you can live with respect with one another's races and still respect their religious differences and not be afraid of what you don't know. So that's what really impressed me with Singapore, is about the diversity, the religious diversity and the tolerance that they have with one another. That's an easy sell.
I don't think that as a majority you suffer the same as a minority. There are certain
Definitely.
societal pressures that affect a minority. I'll give you a personal anecdote. I was on set filming, and this particular person who is an actress, she comes over and she's like, hey, hi, good morning. Hey, hi, good morning. Hey, Divian, what is happening?
Oh my God, no.
Right? At that moment, did I realize, oh, I'm Indian to you.
You're different.
I'm different. I'm different. But you see, in highlighting that will disrupt some form of social dynamic, we are going to be seen as being overly sensitive and not being able to take a joke.
You are.
But we receive that every single
Yes.
day. As we grow up, it's a constant pressure that is not represented or evident, say, to the majority as much, I feel.
You are absolutely right, and I actually agree with you. The question is that you being Chinese in the majority group ought to be more sensitive. When the Chinese are together, sometimes you tend not to take note. But for the minority group, it's very obvious when you are in the minority. You put me in the group of female, my gender identity get activated, right? But when you put me in the group of half males, half females, 50-50, I don't think about gender. When you are in the majority, you need to
Sensitive.
be more sensitive. My best friend is Malay, and I've known him since I was 18 years old. When you're 18 years old, that's where your core values develop. I really think that at that time we didn't look at each other as you are different. I grew up forming quite positive stereotypes of certain ethnic groups because you have good friends from a particular ethnic group that is not your own. And when people talk negative things about other ethnic group, I actually get quite upset because I activate in my mind, hey, you're talking about my friend. The idea of having naturalistic interaction, growing up together, going through common things is quite important.